So, good morning, evening, and kia ora, everyone. I'm Faye, and like Jim Carrey here, I'm a bit of a yes person. Name the hobby, I've tried it. Invite me to see a weird band, I'm in. My career has evolved from graphic design to service design, back again, everywhere. But I'm a chronic dabbler, and I believe that yes is a bit of a mindset. So that all goes a little bit of a way to explaining how I come to be here on Zoom, PechaKucha, before dawn, from half the world away. I couldn't really resist the Oasis reference there for Manchester. But I'm joining you from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And let's go back to 2019, when I got into a car, a train, a tube, 3 planes, a few taxis, and travelled the 11,575 miles to Wellington. I had a working holiday visa, but I wanted to stay in one place, so I wasn't really sure how to describe myself. Was I a backpacker? Was I an expat or a migrant? Now, when I think about migration, I always think about this. I remember a geography lesson at school where we learned the difference between emigration, migration, immigration. And it's always stuck in my head that migration is the one in the middle. You've kind of left, but you haven't arrived yet. You're somewhere in the middle, you're kind of in transit, a bit temporary. But what did other people think? So I asked around, and I'm glad that Ben agrees about this. Most people said that migration reminded them of nature, of seasonal movement, of going somewhere for a while, maybe coming home again, but maybe not. And there'd have to be reasons: warmer weather, more fish, a safe place to hatch your eggs, teach your chicks how to fly. So what were my reasons? I had a good life in the UK. I had friends, I had family, I had a career, I had safety. A lot of people don't have any of those things. But I'm a millennial, I have itchy feet, and I was over London. I wanted an adventure, and I wanted to be close to nature. So enter most livable city in the world. It's kind of a shame, though, that the weather rivals Manchester. But back to 2019, I arrived and I engaged my yes mindset. I went to meetups, I went on mate dates, I stayed in a backpackers, I stayed with a friend of a friend of a friend, I got contracted as a service designer, and I found a place to live. I put a lot of work in, but it was mostly pretty easy, and Wellington began to feel like home. But I realized I'd been ticking off Maslow's hierarchy. It didn't matter if I was staying for like 2 weeks or 20 years. My needs were pretty similar to those seasonal birds. You start right back at the bottom when you're somewhere new, and you need to find a home, you need to find income, you need to find a community, and you've got to do it quickly. So I'm not the first person to do this. New Zealand is a land of migrants. First from Polynesia, they were the ancestor of the Maori people, then Europe, Asia, beyond. People came for the whaling boom, the gold rush, now working visas. And many people before me have had to fulfill those basic needs. And it was certainly easier for me than it was for most of them. So what about them? I've only got one story. And as any good researcher knows, one is not a good sample, especially when that sample is white, young, middle class, and a native English speaker. So I set out to gather a few more stories for you. What did other people think? I asked a friend who grew up in Canada. Her parents had migrated there from Hong Kong, so she felt that moving was natural for her as well. She was on holiday here when she met her now husband, also a migrant, and they decided to stay. They have a young son and a mortgage here, but they don't see it forever. They want to live all over the world. I spoke with another friend's colleague who left India 8 years ago. They were a married couple with a young child wanting a better quality of life. Visa issues got in the way and she had to set off alone. Despite 2 master's degrees, finding a job took longer than the money lasted, and she actually ended up with nowhere to stay for a few days. Had some really dark times before a job offer finally brought some security. I spoke to a friend who arrived here aged 11. Sri Lanka was in the middle of a civil war and her parents wanted a safer life for the kids. She's got romanticized memories of the time, but she knows her parents had a really long, hard road to make a home here. She's now a really proud New Zealand citizen, but she worries for her families overseas. So I spoke with a man who moved here from China. He has really good spoken English, but he doesn't read and write it so well, and he feels it's always going to prevent him from making enough money here. He's thinking of moving on again to Australia, and he's hoping there'll be more manual work there. So what happens when you've got roots overseas, or you want to move again, like Tom Hanks here, you get stuck. In New Zealand, it felt like the COVID pandemic escalated rapidly. One moment, it was happening elsewhere. The next, we went into full lockdown and the borders were closed. No flight in unless you're a citizen, no flight out unless you've got a lot of spare cash. Luckily, this was a good place to get stuck. Jacinda became the envy of everyone back home and inspired an impressive wave of fan art. I was in a very lucky position. I had plenty of time left on my visa and some savings. I felt oddly proud to be here. The roots I'd put down made it feel like home, even if my visa says temporary. Before too long, New Zealand hit global headlines again. There were no active cases of COVID-19. We're in level 1 now and life is weirdly normal here. We can hug our friends, but the borders are still closed. And it really feels like the difference in miles and the difference in freedoms for people all over the world is a lot more extreme right now. So New Zealand currently feels a bit like this. I was thinking of the bad guy, Cal. I had to check his name, who weasels his way onto the lifeboat. Do you remember him? Why have we got a seat? Our friends and families aren't safe. Why did we get it? I know some people feel a sense of duty to go home and some people want to stay, and our families are all urging us to do that. So what happens now? I don't know. I'm hoping that the yes mindset keeps us all adaptable. I know that some people are choosing to go home. I know that some people will have to go home. Some will stay, put down more roots, and then maybe they'll get more than one home. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to keep saying yes. And I'm also going to say thank you. I spoke to quite a lot of people in the run up to this talk, and they all gave me their time and insight and experience and shared some really personal stories with me. And I wanted to thank everyone else for listening today.